going on, everybody? Just going to wait 1 second, make sure the stream is working. I do believe it should be, but I actually need to turn off Wi-Fi, so hold on. Okay, we should be good to go. So, for those of you who may have been wanting to tune in to the stream this morning, there we go. Got to pause that. There we go. Sorry about that. Basically, Catalina, the new Mac operating system, needed to be updated for some reason or other, but either way, it didn't work with OBS. I found a beta version that works, and that's basically what it is. But so, in this live stream, what I would like to talk about is the idea of burnout. And Nick Bavaca, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is a coach at CSU Pueblo, or he was, but he asked if I would, he basically threw out the idea of talking about burnout. And the only way I really know how to get into the idea of burnout is getting into the idea of self-awareness. So as I go through the live stream, I'm going to talk through a few stories that I have, as well as the idea behind understanding yourself and not thinking that you're always good. So the first reason why I feel like people burn out is because they're not actually invested or willing to sacrifice what they need to sacrifice to do it. Now, I'm going to use a parable or some stories to kind of try and navigate through my own understanding of this. But first, you basically have to have an ideal, right? And an ideal is something that you aspire to be. You could think of it as a North Star, somewhere you're trying to get to. And when you think of it in those terms, also stars are, Hollywood actors are stars, MLL pros are stars. And the reason they are is because you kind of perceive this quality of something that's, better than real life within them. And a lot of young kids do that. But what's not usually understood behind that, whether it's being a PLL or MLL star or being, a influencer or whatever, there's a lot that goes into being that person that you don't actually understand. And those are the things that kids, especially high school kids, have to experience multiple things before they make decisions, not before they make decisions, but as they make decisions. And so their ability to understand themselves by being truthful about how they feel in each scenario is what is going to help them do that. Now, I'm going to handle this a little differently than I did my earlier live stream, and I'm going to tackle truth first. So there are a lot of different ways to view truth, and I would say that truth is defined by an act of whether or not it actually works. So you can have perceptions on how things work. It's possible to play soccer on a freeway, but it's not going to work out very well for you. So there are all these ideas that can work or could work, but the key is that they actually do work. So the way it's been explained to me, and I think it was Jordan Peterson who explained it this way, was you think of truth as a map. And if there is a 2-hour trip that you have to take and someone tells you that it's a 10-minute trip, you're not going to be prepared to take that trip because you've been lied to about how long it takes. So maybe you're going to run low on gas. You think you'll be on the highway for 10 minutes. You end up being on the highway for 2 hours, and you end up running out of gas, and you're screwed because someone lied to you about how long this journey was going to take. And the idea of truth is so important because when players and basically everybody, I did this too, I still do this to this day, when they get into these situations where they don't want to let somebody down, they will lie and say what the person wants to hear just so that they will not upset that person. And or whatever it is, say you stole something. Like when I was little, I was stealing stuff, and when I remember vividly, my mom caught me once, and she was like, "Patrick, come into your room." And I walked into her room, and this was in, I think, middle school. And she was like, give me my money back. Because I was a little shit. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, and it was probably the best thing my mom ever did for me, because it taught me that if I was going to be a bullshitter and a liar, I was probably going to get caught. And I'm not a good liar at all. You know, I'm not always, what I say is not always right, but I'm never, like, if I try to deceive, it's just too easy to tell. But so I tell you that story because everyone that I've come into contact with understands that feeling of whether or not they are kind of being deceptive, if they're not putting everything out there, everything like that. And I think that there's a misunderstanding of why we want to be truthful with those things. So, like the map idea where you're trying to get somewhere, and if the map's directions aren't truthful, aren't correct, you're not going to get to where you want to go. When you act in the world in a non-truthful manner, which maybe you don't know one way or the other, but if you act in a way that's deceptive, you are not going to have, like, the world is not going to show you what's correct or what's wrong about that situation if you're lying. So, case in point, if you're a high school kid and you've been dating this girl and, you know, or whatever the situation is, you're in a relationship and you really don't want to be in the relationship anymore, but you don't want to upset this person because you care about this person, you end up getting into this battle where you know what's right and you know what you actually think, but then you're lying to yourself, and the world is not, you're not going to be available to find the next part of what your life is because you're still wrapped up trying to lie about this specific thing. And as you are navigating the world, if you continually lie, you're not going to be able to make changes based on what is real. You're going to be making changes based on what is false. And that's going to take you farther and farther away from your goal or your North Star. So, with the idea of truth being something that will move you further towards your goal, I'm going to talk about positive emotion. So, positive emotion is all tied to a goal. So, the easiest one to understand, easiest way to understand this, and I'll make it, I think I'll add in another layer, is with personalities. So, when you get hungry, it's not just that you're hungry. You embody an entire personality type that is working towards finding food. And for a lot of us, that means we get pretty irritable. We get hangry. And until you find that food and you get satiated, you can be kind of irritable. Now, that's the easiest way to understand it. But a better way to understand it is through, I wonder who, so if you are in college, this is a decent way to explain it. So if you don't have a goal, any movement you make isn't going to be towards something, and therefore you won't have positive emotion. That's what I'm trying to explain, but I need to figure out how I want to get there. So if you're in college and you're working towards your degree, time you're working and you complete an assignment, you complete something you're trying to do, you end up, everything gives you that positive emotion. If you think about it as far as being in high school or anything else, once you finish the actual assignment, you feel better about how you did something because you progressed towards your goal of getting an A in the class, which meant you would graduate, which meant you'll have better chances at getting to a college, which means all of these other things are all wrapped up into a goal that you have set out. But once you accomplish that goal, say it's graduating from college, now you have to reestablish what that goal is. And that's the thing that I feel most high school kids don't understand that they have the ability to go do. So in order to move through the world in a way that will be most beneficial to yourself, you must do it in a way that is truthful and in a way that allows you to change what it is you're actually aiming for. So, in relationship to burnout, the only reason I feel people get burnt out is because they're not doing what they would want to be doing. The only time I really got burnt out with lacrosse was the last year coaching at Grandview, because it was just, it was a dumpster fire. Like things just kept happening wrong and wrong and wrong. And there were parents complaining and all this stuff. And then the, whole event at the end of the year happened. And it wasn't something that, I just got pretty much in over my head with trying to have a baby and all this other stuff. But so there was a point when I realized I didn't want to be a head coach anymore because it was just too much. It was too much to deal with. There just wasn't enough there for me. And I think that understanding has helped me in where I've been going since I made the decision to not be there anymore. So, okay. I want to talk about the dichotomy between self-esteem and self-awareness. Self-esteem is a BS concept. Self-esteem, I hate the fact that people think it. So the idea of self-esteem is that you believe in yourself enough that you'll push forward and do other things. But it's really not, because if you think about the idea of esteem is something that you hold in high regard, right? But you shouldn't hold yourself in high regard if you have goals to do better, right? I could be way better than I am now. I think the idea is more so being self-aware into what you actually want to pursue so that then the things that you try to pursue, you'll be pretty good at them. So I'm going to outline another principle. The Pareto principle is the principle that is the 80-20 idea. So basically in business, people say that either 20% of the employees you have present 80% of the problems, or 20% of the people do 80% of the work. But what this really boils down to is a Pareto distribution, which actually is it's basically a law. So if you look into let's see, there's tons of different examples. If you look into the size of human settlements by cities and villages and like New York, the size of those cities is going to be, well, what's the rule? The rule is that the square root of the number of whatever the thing is responsible for 50% of those things. So if you think of songs, right? Only a very, very minute number of songs hit the Billboard charts and get played the majority of the time. So if you think that there are 1 million songs, which there are way more than that, 10,000 of those, or I guess 1,000 of those, get played 50% of the time. And so you have, the ones that are at the very highest end of the distribution that get played more than anything else. And why I'm telling you that as it relates to burnout and self-awareness is that until you go through and try a bunch of things, you're never going to know what you want to do. But in order to become a person who, in whatever enterprise you want to do something in, become that top 10%, 20% of what you do, if you don't enjoy it, you're never going to work hard enough to actually get to that point. So, Gary Vee talks about self-awareness, and he basically phrases it like this: if you're not diehard into what you're doing, someone else is going to do it better, and they're going to not necessarily take it from you, but they're going to win the lion's share. So a really easy way to think about this is through paper towels, paper plates, or all of the stuff you buy at a supermarket is made by mainly 5 big companies. You've got like Procter and Gamble. I think they actually own Kraft, but there's really only 5 companies that make the majority of what is in a supermarket. And then you think about Amazon. Well, let's leave Amazon there for a second. The thing is that we actually want to allow them to have the lion's share of what they do because they've learned how to do it so well that it serves the rest of us. Like, people seem to think that because someone creates something and it's valuable to everybody else, that they have somehow conned everyone else into, giving them that value, when that's total BS. Like, the first plasma TV screens cost $60,000. And if there aren't the people there who can buy a $60,000 TV at the beginning of plasma and flat screen TVs, no one has flat screens now. And now flat screens are so cheap. You can buy one for $500, whenever. If you're buying a small one, it's even smaller than that. But everybody has one now. So all the technology gets built down into those things. So basically, at the inception of creating new technology, you have to have those people who can buy those big ticket items. Now, how that relates to self-awareness is through the Pareto distribution, because once someone's doing something pretty well, you have to, if you're trying to get into that market, you're going to have to do it better than what they're doing. And the only way that's going to happen is if you kind of know what you're doing. So earlier I told the story, I'll tell it again. When I was in high school, I had a AP psychology class my junior year. This was when I was trying to think about colleges, think about where I wanted to go, and I really loved my AP Psych class. And what I knew about psychology was that I would have to get a master's and I would have to take more school, and that even if I did do that, I probably wouldn't make any money. That was where my mind went wrong, because I should have just kept with the psychology. So instead, one of my goals as I was younger was I always wanted to be like my brothers. My brothers played lacrosse. I loved it. I picked it up. They always encouraged me. And my brother was into computer science, and he was in, he was always someone that I looked up to, and he built his own company, and then he sold his own company, and he did great things. And so when I went into college, I decided to do computer science first. It was my very first class ever in college. It was at 8 a.m. and I got a D. Didn't do very well. It also wasn't something that when I, typed in a code and saw a blue circle was like, wow, whoa, I wonder what I could do. Now I think about it and I'm like, man, I wish I could do all of that. Same with playing the piano, same with so many things that I once was supposed to be doing, but then kind of left out doing. But so I wanted to do psychology my senior year in high school, decided to do computer science when I got to Goucher. Got a D, then I switched to business, because if you do business, you can at least be around anything because you're doing business, or so I thought. But then I got into my macro and microeconomics classes, did all that stuff, didn't want to do it. Then I'm like, cool, I'd love to be a teacher. I like to teach and impact kids. No, not going to be a teacher. There's just something that I don't like about the idea of how you have to act in those scenarios that, you kind of lose. Sometimes I feel you can lose the personal nature. I don't know that. But so then after I did all of that, I decided to go and do psychology and neuroscience. And I went back to what I started with. And I feel like I got a lot of value out of trying all those different things. But I also feel that if I had just gone in on my passion of psychology, I either may have ended up elsewhere, or I may have gone farther in depth into what I was actually doing. But the key here was that I was always encouraged to just kind of go do. Like when I made my decisions, I wasn't told not to do them. I was always told, cool, but go gung-ho into whatever it is. And then you kind of figure out where you want to go from there. I still love reading about psychology. I still love figuring out kind of the development of kids and how they interact. And I love dissecting the ideas of a team and all of those things. So after college, I ended up working at Ridgeview Academy, which is a youth correction center, which basically was kids who had committed felonies. And that was definitely an eye-opening experience. I got to see and interact with a bunch of people who had vastly different experiences than I did. I really enjoyed the circle sessions where we got to kind of talk about how life was, things like that. But after a while, I really didn't like the idea of having to go to work and possibly restrain a 14 or 15-year-old kid. I've never been like my brother, Nick, the youngest of my older brothers. He would do that, and I know he didn't like doing it, but he was very good at it. Because I think he got, he was the youngest, and therefore, he kind of has that chip on his shoulder, and he always has, that I didn't really have from my experiences. And understanding that about myself took 2 years of time working in that spot. So then a book was referred to me by my boss at the time called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I read the book and decided I was going to quit working at Ridgeview and I was going to do lacrosse full time. And if you've seen and kept watch of POWLAX started when I was in Boulder and I did trainings. Then I went and I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods and I sold more sticks than anyone else in the country in a Colorado location in Broomfield. And I even got to meet the president, and he asked me how I sold so many sticks. And the basic idea was that I actually knew more about what I was selling. And so people came to me, and it was relatively easy because lacrosse was a new thing that they had added at Dick's. And whenever I was talking around the community, I would have them come in to see me, and I would string their sticks very well. So that was what that was. Then I went to Ridgeview. Then after Ridgeview, I decided I was going to do custom mesh. And so I started to look into how to do that. And it really wasn't I didn't know what I was doing at all. And as I started to progress through it, I did better and better. And then I built, a small little business on doing mesh and then doing trainings, other things like that. And then created a team. The team grew, got the job at Grandview. Right when I quit at Ridgeview, I also went to a 3D camp, and it was actually right before the Denver shootout. They do like a little demo of what 3D is doing, and I went and I was taking notes. And then Jamie Monroe pulled up on on one of his scooters, or not a scooter, on a golf cart, and was like, "What's going on? Like, how are you?" And we started talking because I went to a Denver camp, and that's how I ended up at Goucher. And so he invited me to coach at Vista with him and to coach for 3D. And I learned so much from Jamie. Like, I am so indebted to him as far as what that was. But he was also my North Star at that point in time, was someone who really contributed to the knowledge of the game, all around. And so much of what I know is from him. And, I'm fully indebted to him for that. But so after doing the custom mesh and the stringing and all of that, I realized that I really wanted to impact the, coaches and basically lay out all that I knew and pass it on to everybody else. And that's been very cool. That's been going very well. And now whenever I am in a situation where I'm building something new for POWLAX and the Master Coach stuff, I feel like I don't have enough time to keep going. Like, I'm always wanting to get back into either doing a live stream or working on the videos that I'm putting out, because, every day has the responsibility of being a dad and watching Turner or doing, trainings and going to practice. And the amount of time I have to actually spend on it is definitely a lot shorter. But my ability to know that that's kind of where I'm at and what I'm doing, and I'm moving towards a specific goal, has helped me to understand myself and then be better able to, just really enjoy my time more as I'm working towards these things. And I feel like that's something that so many kids kind of get lost in doing. They feel like they have to have it all figured out when they're 18, 21, or 30. And I really want to push players to go and experience more. So when I think about kids who are burning out on lacrosse, I'm like, well, is this really what you want to be doing? And so there's a level, some kids just want to have fun. Some kids want to just enjoy their time because they enjoy the sport. Other kids, they want to be that MLL player or that PLL player. But understanding, especially at a high school, that, certain kids aren't going to want to be doing all of the extra things. It makes sense, like, just because when I grew up, when I was younger, I wanted to be Mark Millen or Jesse Hubbard. So Jesse Hubbard or Mark Millen. Doesn't mean that I knew what it took to do what they were doing. Like, I never liked lifting. The only time I actually enjoyed lifting was at Goucher, and that was right before I tore my ACL, and then I never really liked lifting again. Like, I still lift on occasion, but one of the hardest things about seeing a point in the future or an ideal of being someone is that you don't know what goes into it. So all these kids who think that they want to go to college and play lacrosse, there are so many kids who, gosh, I want to say it's like 80%. No, it's probably less than that. But a vast majority, I don't know if it's even a majority, but a lot of the kids who I have known that have gone out to play in college are no longer playing in college, even though they're still in school. There's a few who are still playing, but many of them don't play their whole 4 years. And I think once they get out into the world, they realize how much more is there. And, many of them really try to strive towards what interests them. And I think that's the best thing that they can do, because once the sport is done, like, unless you're a professional athlete or you're trying to do something like that, for a lot of people, loving the game is just that. It's just loving it's just loving the game. And I feel that if kids are getting burnt out, it is mainly because they didn't really know what it really took to do what they wanted. And so for all the kids who really just want to interact with their friends and play the sport that they love, that's great. Like, do that. And you know what? Having those friends there makes all of the side work of lifting and being on the wall, it makes it so much easier. But as a coach, we have to understand that for some of these players, they're not in it because they want to win a state championship. Like, of course they want to win a state championship, but whether or not they're willing to make the sacrifices that's going to make that possible isn't what it's about. Like, it goes back to the idea for me of get invited back to playing the game. Like, anytime you're involved in a lacrosse game, you want to put your best foot forward, because as you do that, you learn how to interact with others on a level that you're going to have to do over and over again as you continue to work with others then. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting thing to see coaches get upset at kids who are not putting in their full effort because they're really they never wanted to make the sacrifice that they thought that they were going to have to make. Now, if a player has made a commitment to a team to do that, I feel that they should live out their commitment. But I'm also not in favor of, like, you don't force a kid to go do it. But you do want them to understand that there are going to be times in their lives when, responsibility is built into what that is. And that goes into the North Star idea of when you are making strides towards a goal you have this beneficial feeling, like you get that positive emotion out of it. And there's no better feeling than putting the barbell back on a squat rack. You know what I mean? Like, you feel accomplished after you're done with those reps. And it's the same with completing a live stream or the other little videos I've been doing, or the big long videos that I've been doing. Like, the responsibility is the positive emotion, because there is the level of accomplishment that you get once you are done. Now, if that thing can be something that you truly enjoy doing the whole way, you're going to be one of the people that works harder than anyone else and will sacrifice more than anybody else and will most likely climb to the top of that hierarchy or ladder. So I think that the more we as coaches and people who are influencing young minds can push them to go try as many new things as possible to figure out where they want to be, that's the most important thing, because it's not about winning the world that matters and that I think is something that most people can attain. But I do feel that if you're truthful with the world and you allow the reactions of people and places that you work and go to school and all of that, I feel that you'll be able to better find your space and your niche and wherever you should be. So, like, take anyone who's an accountant. Like, if you really enjoy working with numbers, or you're just good at it and it's something that you can do and you can do it quickly and efficiently, like, good for you. If you found that spot and you enjoy doing that, that is something that I will never like to do. Like, I'm relatively decent with numbers, but I would never want to work with them all day. Like, I think I have to have some kind of creative element for what I do, and that, I can get to that with the making mesh, making PDFs, making videos, and doing all of this, because whenever I'm in that zone, I just continually push through it. And it's just what I've found that I love to do. And then when I come out of that, I enjoy spending time with my son. I enjoy spending time with, my fiance. I love doing all of that. I just went to go pick up balls at Lacrosse Unlimited and talked about lacrosse for an hour and a half. Like, there are certain things that as you're doing them, you really enjoy doing them. And so the more you can try, the more you can taste, the better for all of these kids who are coming up in high school. And I don't think it's a bad thing to not know what you want to do when you go to college. But I do think that if you're going to go to college not knowing what you want to do, you better have an idea of how you're going to pay for it. Because the idea of just going to college to kind of figure things out. I think it's more valuable to spend a year or two out of school interacting with the world and having a job than it is to think that what you're learning in classes is going to give you an understanding of how the world works and what you're going to need to do. So, I do think it's beneficial to figure out what is it you want to do, what makes your kind of heart sing and what you would like to do, because I think those things are going to allow you to work harder than anybody else and to fill a void that is most beneficial. So that's kind of my thoughts on burnout and self-awareness. Once again, I hate the idea of self-esteem. I think that self-esteem, you shouldn't hold yourself above things, is my idea. Like, I'm a relatively decent lacrosse coach who likes to make PDFs and videos. Like, I've got so far to go. And, as a dad and as just a human, I'm working all the time to do better, and I'm aware of that. And the other thing about self-awareness that you have to understand is that I think I'm not sure if it was Nietzsche or who it was that said it, but I think it might have been Jung too, I'm not sure. But basically, the line of good and evil runs down the center of every person's soul. Like, so I guess Jung would call this to, what does he say? He says to integrate the shadow. So basically that we all have evil in us and we can be those mean people. And at a level you actually want to have that harness, but you don't want to unleash it. So another kind of cool fact that I really like is, I think it's in some point in the Bible where it's the meek will inherit the earth. And nowadays people think meek is like, it's like shy and, reserved, but the way it's meant to be said in the biblical sense is, the meek are the people who basically will utilize. It is Solzhenitsyn? Okay. Is that the line for good and evil goes down the center of everything? Either way. But so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of all confused now, but so I just think that it's something about having self-awareness is definitely extremely important. I think that understanding your own capacity for evil. So it's just like being that, it's just like being the coach on the sideline who yells and screams. You got to understand that that's going to happen so that you also understand that you can try to fix it. So, I think that understanding definitely will help in the coach's sense. But so as far as burnout, I think that there are times when you can run yourself ragged, and that when that happens, you need to know how to refresh yourself. Like for me, if I'm working 24/7 and I'm coaching all here and there and I'm then watching Turner and I don't get anything done, like I feel worthless sometimes because I haven't gotten a new video out or a new PDF out. But as I'm working on this video that I'm doing right now, when it's done, oh, it's going to be the coolest thing ever. It's going to be the longest video I've ever made. It's going to be so in-depth into what these things are. And for a coach who has never really gone in depth on it, I think there's so much valuable information that it's going to do. But until I actually, put it out, there's kind of this feeling of, am I moving towards what I want to be moving towards? So like, and if my mind frame is screwed up where I'm thinking I should be moving in one direction, like I think I'm going to get work done, and then I have to take care of my son, like I'll get all upset and I'll get all pissy when I need to be able to reorient my aim. And if I reorient my aim and I enjoy the time with my son and then I work when I work, like, it's so much better. But until you have an understanding of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, there is no way of, there's no way of being sure that you're actively, doing what you should be doing, I guess is the idea. But so cool. Well, let's see. I think it's, Scribble. Thanks for tuning in. Only one at this point. Hopefully some other people will watch, and I'll definitely put out some more things. So yeah, if you're a parent or a coach and you can encourage your kid to pursue something that they find meaningful at the time, I guarantee you once they start actively doing that thing, they're going to see how difficult it is. I remember spending, I bought, I want to say like 2,000 POWLAX bracelets before the World Games, and I handed out about 150 of them. Like, my perception of what was actually going to happen wasn't going to happen. And then I remember buying mesh and making a bunch of breast cancer meshes and donating to a breast cancer foundation. And it was kind of a ploy like the Tom's thing. And I was just a naive kid. It's just what you go through. But if I had never had the interest and been truthful that that's what I wanted to pursue, I wouldn't be where I am now. And so I like where I'm at now. And I get to do things that I enjoy doing. And it's can be rare. And, you know, I realize that I'm definitely very lucky to be able to do that. But if you don't go try as much stuff as you can to figure out what you enjoy doing, you're never going to have the opportunity to do what you like for your life. So that's what I hope and I would like for more players to have. Thanks for tuning in, and yeah, have a good one. We'll see you guys in the next one. Oh, yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully the new video will be out by next Tuesday. I doubt it. I've got a lot of actual examples to put in now, but once I shut this down, I'm going to get to work on that. So have a good one. Appreciate you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next live stream.